Just a quick warning before we get into this story, some people may find this very distressing, so just prepare yourself for an uncomfortable and heartbreaking story. This is a story about the devastating lengths Hijame, Fuiji's wife, went to assist him with his honouring military service in World War II. When Hijame first joined the military, he was based as an infantryman in the Japanese army, as he was a very skilled gunman and his abilities were needed in the fight against China, which Japan and China had been fighting in battle since 1931. However, during his time in China, he was hit with a mortar shell. This caused very significant and permanent damage to his left hand. So after his terrible accident, Hijame was instantly sent to the nearest camp hospital where he would go and receive his treatment for his open wound. So Hijame's time at the hospital, he had a nurse called Fukuko, and she was assigned to mend Hijame's left hand. But these two would very quickly have a romantic connection, and they very quickly fell deeply in love with each other. And shortly after, the new couple decided to get married. They would also move back to Japan, and they would also go on to have 2 daughters together. Once their return back to Japan was completed, Hijame had a very respectable reputation, and he was enthusiastically selected to join the Army Air Corps Academy. Then in 1943, once he graduated the academy, he went on to become a commander at the Kumagaya Army Aviation School. His job consisted of training the students to form their abilities to become highly skilled and loyal pilots. Hijame honoured his country with pride, and he was willing to sacrifice everything he had to serve his country. He was proud of his patriotic mentality, but at the same time it haunted him, because since his accident in China, he was unable to properly grip the control stick of a plane. Hijame would then go on to send a request to join the Special Attack Force, but that one was accepted, so he went on to send another request to the Special Attack Force, but again he was rejected. The Special Attack Force was formed to defeat the US naval fleet that was slowly approaching Japan and all of the small islands around Japan. This force had one job, and it proved to be very effective at turning the US naval fleet. Their job was to kamikaze into all of the American ships. For those who don't know what a kamikaze pilot does, so there will be one pilot who gets into a specifically designed plane, which is called the Cherry Blossom in Japan, and they would get into the plane and then they would fly in swarms around the battleships which they're intending to turn or destroy, and then they'd find the spot where they want to impact, and then as soon as they find this spot, they will face the nose of the plane directly into that spot, and they'll travel at full speed until impact. This would obviously explode the plane, and it would obviously kill the pilot in most cases, and it would also destroy a very large area of the battleships. So his request to join the Special Attack Force were rejected because of his high reputation in the military, but he was mainly rejected because he had a wife and 2 children. During this time, everyone's nightmares was being published all around Japan. So in the newspapers, it was presenting that if the Americans did manage to land in Japan, they would come and take over. They would murder everyone. They would sexually assault the women. They would either make slaves, or they would either just murder all of the men. So the fear of this happening to Hijame's family would have been the main enthusiasm that he had to join the Special Attack Force, as he intended to do everything he could to fight for his country and to obviously fight for his family. He also promised his students at the aviation school that he will be attending them on this big mission. So Hijame must have been going through a really stressful time after being rejected twice, because he was essentially not being allowed to serve the country the way he intended to, the way he wanted to. So once Fukuko, Hijame's wife, found out about the reason as to why he was rejected from joining the Special Attack Force, she decided to do the thing she could only think of doing. And on December 14th, 1944, Fukuko would send out a letter to Hijame reading, "Since you probably would be worried about us and not be able to freely carry out your duties because we are here, we go ahead before you and will wait for you. Please fight without reserve." Shortly after sending this note to Hijame, Fukuko would go on to dress up in her finest kimono, and also her 2 children, who were only aged 1 and 3 at the time. The 3 would slowly make their way to the Arkawa River. Fukuko would then go and wait her ankles and also tie herself to her children, and all 3 of them would jump into the river. The 3 deceased bodies were found the day after. So after the funeral of Hijame's family, he would go on to cutting his hand, and then he would go on to write his 3rd application to join the Special Attack Force, but it was written in his own blood. Then on May the 28th, 1945, Hijame would then go on board his very own Cherry Blossom plane, and he was commanding the 45th Shinbu Squadron. Then as he got to the area of where all the battleships were, Hijame would find his target, which happened to be the USS Drexler. He would point his nose down at his desired location, and he would fly at full force straight into that location. His impact with the USS Drexler would go on to sink the ship, and it killed 158 of the men on board. Hijame was one of 3,000 Japanese kamikaze pilots to perish in World War II. So that is the story of Hijame and his family. So that's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe so you never miss more of these videos. And of course, make sure you like if you enjoyed this video. Also, you can go and check out all my socials. They're all in the description. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.